Do you like the idea of being healthy each day? What if I told you that it's possible to be healthy just by reading one page of a book each day and doing what that page says? Healthy Living Every Day is a new book available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble that offers an array of alternative healing and preventive therapies. This book is the wellness blueprint that will help you live a happier and healthier life. Get your copy on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or use one of the links in the show notes to get your copy as well. This book also happens to be my mom's very first book, so I'd love to see Breakthrough Success listeners grab their copy. Anyway, let's get right into the episode. What's up, Breakthrough Success listeners? Mark Birdie, the podcasting coach here, helping people launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts. And one of the things that people think about, sometimes they think about it very often, other times not as much, is it okay to be rich? And I feel like there are some people who maybe they have a bad mindset towards money, where if you have so much money, you become corrupt, or if you have so much money, you don't have time to spend with the people you love. So I feel like there's lots of thoughts about money. Maybe you're not thinking them now, but you could be thinking them in your core beliefs or deep down in your subconscious. So we're going to talk about, is it okay to be rich? The answer is yes, but we're going to get into why and how to build that belief for yourself and shifting your money mindset as well. So a lot of awesome content to cover here. The guest who joins us today, she is a certified law of attraction life coach and spiritual mentor. Our guest is also the author of It's Okay to Be Rich, the Entrepreneur's Guide to Increase Wealth and Personal Mastery, which has been endorsed by Harv Eker. So really big endorsement there. So definitely go grab your copy. We'll be in the show notes. Our guest is also the host of the Spirituality for the Politically Incorrect podcast. So a lot of things our guest is working on. We're going to hear from her in this episode. And our guest is none other than Nancy Showalter. Nancy, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. Happy to be here.
Nancy, I'm so happy to have you on the Breakthrough Success podcast. And this idea of it's okay to be rich, it definitely feels a little weird coming out of my tongue because I've always been the idea, it's okay to be rich. But I mean, you hear about these different storylines about how people view money, and you could even see it a little bit. I believe each of us could see it a little bit, where there's this fear of success. People get the fear of failure, but fear of success is definitely a thing. So I'm wondering, when you first came across the idea of, it's okay for me to be rich, and how you're able to build on it.
Well, my background, as you said, is a lot of personal development, spirituality. And when you are in some of those areas, then you have a lot of preconceived ideas placed upon you about, now, if you're going to be spiritual, then you can't be rich, this kind of mindset. And then, of course, you have to look at everything you were raised with. What did you learn about money? What did you hear from your parents, your school, your church, everything? But I can tell you there's many people who are in the personal development, spirituality, and just any of the service industries, even masseuses, et cetera, that you have to overcome this concept of it's not okay to be rich, that you have to overcome that because it somehow is tied with the fact that, you're not spiritual, or you're not really serving people. You're not giving of yourself totally selflessly. There's a lot of mindset around this whole thing. And so for me, I had to work at that. I actually had to work at that. And I realized, I take clients through a lot of different questions, but some of the things, of course, I did myself way back in the day. And it was one of the things I do tell people is, okay, what is your first recollection of earning money in your life? Usually, we're teenagers or whatever at that point, depending on the person. And how did you feel when you earned your first money yourself independently? And when I went back and did that for myself, I realized that I couldn't even remember, number one, how much money I earned. And the big thing that I was more impressed that, hey, I did this. I was 12 years old. I babysat for 7 kids. And, I felt very accomplished, but I couldn't remember. It's and then it dawned on me, money wasn't that important to me. And being on a spiritual path and teaching spirituality, I realized I have to make a shift here because money is important.
Yeah,
Lots of mind shifts.
Yeah, I'd be like, the big one you hear is that money doesn't buy happiness, but money buys options and experiences. Like, if you want to go on a vacation, that takes money. If you want to go to a concert, that takes money. So money doesn't buy happiness, but it can certainly buy experiences. It buys you different options. So
of course. And happiness comes from within you.
Yes.
No matter what situation you're in. So that's a given. But money doesn't buy happiness. Money doesn't buy any of those intangible things that we strive for. And that's sometimes what the other issue is, when people get caught up thinking when they've earned so much, when they've accomplished such, okay, when I get my first million, I'll be happy. And then find out that's not the case.
Yeah, happiness is very internal. If you look for external, it's not going to work. And then the thing with pegging your happiness on a goal is like, when you hit 1 million, it's like you get used to it. So now it's like, I'll be happy when I have 10 million.
Yeah.
I'll be happy when I have 100 million. I'll be happy when I'm richer than Jeff Bezos. And it just keeps building from there. So,
right.
I mean, you got to have the happiness from internally. That doesn't mean like don't go after goals. Like, going after goals, setting money goals really helps you make more money, but understanding that part about the happiness is certainly important. I'm wondering if you could share with us how you got a stronger focus on money, because I feel like there are people who they don't think about it as much. They maybe aren't as focused on it. So I'm wondering if you could share some of that with us.
Well, when you realize you're doing what you love and you're helping a lot of people, but you're not earning enough money to live. So that's how you can start to focus on money, for sure. And, I have 3 keys that I tell people to really shift their mindset to one of abundance. And the first key, it's a little controversial sometimes for people, but it's begin by shifting your thinking that you are already rich. And you think, what does that mean? But rich in all sense, my teaching is not just rich in money, but also rich in your relationships, in your health, in all the aspects of life. And when you look at it's a matter of shifting your perspective. My husband and I live in Ecuador in South America most of the year. And so I've had also a lot of opportunity to travel around the world to different cultures and such. And when you look at some of the statistics about how much money people earn in the world, there's a couple of things. Most people have more access to a mobile phone than to toilets. Strange concept, but that is true of what the statistic is. Right here in Ecuador, some people live on $50 a month. And you wonder, how can that be? But I can tell you that many people here, even though they're considered poor by Western standards, are happy. And they're not necessarily craving all one thing after another. Now, there are some legitimately very, very poor people, but they do get help and assistance. So it's very important to recognize, number one, that count the ways that you are rich. Count all those ways. Make that shift in your perspective, because most people that are listening to this podcast, they're going to have breakfast in the morning. They're not living with a dirt floor. They might be living paycheck to paycheck. They might have, financial issues. But bottom line, we have many things to be grateful for, and to shift. It's kind of like from the glass half full to the glass half empty to the glass half full. And it's the same way looking at your life. What are the things to be thankful for? How are you rich? And start focusing on those things, being grateful for those things, and then moving forward with some very tangible goals. Like you say, it's not a matter of just wishful thinking. We do have to act. And so that's kind of the first thing. Just begin by shifting that perspective. And then the second point is examine your personal BS, and not what you're thinking, but your belief system. What did you learn again as a child? What did you hear growing up? What are some of those things in your subconscious that are actually blocking you from receiving the abundance that you want? And we all have a story. We all have a story when people ask us about our situation. So you have to really ask, what is your story? When people ask how, what about you? Do you go into how the terrible background when you grew up, how your parents were awful, or how the job is terrible you don't like? Do you go into, what is your story that revolves around money? And that's very important to examine that and to really, look at, are you blaming others for your situation? Or are you taking that responsibility and understanding that you're responsible?
Yeah, I like that idea of going deep into the belief system. We've had a few guests in the show who talk about that, but it's just the key thing, being able to ask yourself questions. Think about that experience when you were 3, or your first concepts of money and how they formed. As Nancy points out, think about how you felt when you first earned money and remember that experience, because that's one of those things that really, it doesn't feel like much in the moment, but it has a big impact on how you view money. And I like this idea of being rich, not just in your wallet, but in your life. And on that thread, I feel like there are people who they're grinding, they're working on their businesses, they're really trying to make something happen, but that comes at the expense of family time. So how can we break that lifestyle where we're able to continue to grind in our businesses, see results, grow, make money, but have all of our other areas of life in check?
Well, and that kind of touches on what I just talked about with the belief system. It's where do you perceive, do you have to just work all the time before you're ever going to get ahead? I mean, you really have to shift that story and make your life the way you want it balanced. Because we have choices. We make decisions. And nobody's going to shift our life for us. Nobody's going to take away these situations. And so it's a matter of looking at the situation differently. And I mean, I basically teach to people that your circumstances are not you. And you can't identify with them. You have to understand who you are. You have to understand the power that is within you. And this is where a little bit the spirituality and the personal development comes in. You were made in the image and likeness of the divine, and bring forth that part that is powerful and has a specific purpose. That's what you focus on. When I was younger, starting out with a lot of this stuff, I'm pretty young, and when you're trying to find your identity separate from your parents, when you're growing up, a teenager and such, and there's sometimes you say, my parents doing this, I'll never do that when I grow up. And then when you grow up, you start doing the same things and you realize, oh, wait a minute. And so I was at one point, I was with a mentor, a gentleman, older, more mature gentleman. And I was saying, I don't want to be like my mother. Now, my mother's a wonderful person, love her, and that's not an issue, but she was a little dominating, and there was something I was doing. I don't even remember exactly what I didn't like, but I remember the lesson. And here's this guy listening to me go on about how I don't want to be like my mother. And he just, when I stopped talking, he just held out his arm with his palm down. He said, you don't want to be like your mother? I said, no. Then he turned his palm up and he said, then don't be like your mother. And that just made such an impression on me, because it hit me like, who's keeping me from being different? No one. No one was. And no one was then, no one is now, no one ever is. You can be something different by your own choice. And then you want to focus on what you want in your life and not be giving all your energy to the limitations and the negatives that you might perceive are negative in your life. Yes, you have to deal with your conditions. You're not denying your conditions, but you're denying the power they have in your life. Those conditions have no power. You're going to create something new. And this gets into, of course, your goals and shifting, though, your mindset and shifting your vibration actually to a higher place in emotional vibrations of joy, of gratitude, all of these things that put you a match for what you want.
Yeah, and that's a really great point. We have more control than we realize. Some people, they may feel like they're sinking, and that's just
Right.
because you left the steering wheel of the ship. You are the captain of your ship, and if you feel like you're sinking, it means you just haven't put your hands on the wheel and done your job as captain yet. So always remember you have control to change different situations, change your mindset towards different situations, because that will affect how you become rich, not just in money, but in all the areas of your life. And like, just think about the math side also. Like, if you feel like you have to work like more days a week that you have to, then think about how can you make that extra money. Like, one of the things that I like to do is I like to not spend unless it's on running. Like, that's the only thing I spend other than like living expenses. And granted, I don't have too many of those yet, but like, you could, like, if you put some into like a dividend, so like you're making enough dividend income to take like a day off each week and be fine. I mean, you don't have to like conform yourself to something you don't like. Just find ways to get out of that.
Right. And I also have a formula for people who are stuck in a job that they don't like and they feel they can't leave it because they need the income or whatever. And it's a little unconventional, but if you don't, if you're not in the job you love, then there's a good solution. Love the job you're in. Give yourself to it totally. Give everything to it totally. Be happy, be joyful about it, no matter how awful you might think it is. Be good to the people who might be not treating you well. And then the universe opens up possibilities for you. You have to move out of that situation because you are in a much higher, better place than your environment. So, you think of Viktor Frankl, the
Yeah,
one who was, I
yeah, I
mean,
was thinking of them. Yeah,
exactly. He realized he cannot control his environment, but he can control how he reacted and how he responded to that environment. And nobody can control your mind and your heart. You really have control of that.
yeah, and we got different things going on. We got different situations we may or may not like. But a guy like Viktor Frankl, I mean, like, no one's going through what he went through. No one. So, I mean, like, you just got to put your excuse to the side and just like realize if that guy could like stay happy and like use his mind and not lose it, then we definitely.
I mean, really, definitely a good example. Now, the third step that I would say would be willing to move out of your comfort zone. And this is very important because it's so easy to just stay in our circumstances and complain. But Albert Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So we have to step out of our comfort zone. We have to look at what are our goals? What is the first step that I could do right now to move toward that goal? And with what I have, and not necessarily wishing for something else. When we're always wanting something else, we're recognizing that we don't have it.
Yep.
And we're striving. And so then this is where we will start with some of the understanding of the declarations or the affirmations that I am signifies consciousness. There's no other species on the planet that can say I am with self-conscious awareness, or can change. Many animals may be very intelligent and you can train them and such, but they're always subject to their nature. The human being is the one who has the ability to change and be something different and change who we are by our decision and focusing upon that. And like I said, who's stopping you from being happy? Who's stopping you from being anything? Being's the first cause.
It's all us. One of the things that I do want to hit on also is, I mean, this idea of just like, it's okay to be rich, and this idea of being grateful for where we are. Like we talked a little bit earlier, like if you said $1 million is your goal to be happy, that you want 10 million, 100, whatever, like you just keep building up. And you bring up a great point where like people want more and more and more, but they have to realize that they are enough, and they're already great for what they are. But at the same time, like, like wanting more money, wanting more book sales, wanting more whatever it is you want. I mean, that's
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that at all.
So
But
how do we strike that balance?
Yeah, well, we tend to reverse it. When I have this money, I'll be happy. All you have to do is reverse it. Be happy, and then go for the money. And then when you get it, you're still happy, happier maybe. So it's a matter, once again, of shifting that mindset. And it's very, very important that we understand that we cannot always be looking for something outside of ourselves for happiness or fulfillment or joy or whatever. It's all comes from within.
Yep.
And we can be happy by just being happy. You can just be happy for no reason.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, you don't have to. I mean, you can wake up in the morning with, today and every day is, the greatest day I'm going to have. Or you can wake up and just think about all your problems and be overwhelmed. And you will never succeed in the business that way. We just, maybe not even in life, if we just have that negative view all the time. Yeah, we make some progress, but not necessarily what we want to make.
I love the the happiness being that internal force that fuels the rest of how you carry yourself throughout the day, that fuels the I want more money, more book sales, like wanting those things, but being indifferent sort of in a way where you're still happy regardless of what happens.
You can be happy while you work for those goals. Yeah. Nobody's stopping you. You don't have to wait for happiness or fulfillment or joy or whatever, or if I lose a certain amount of weight, I'm going to be happy. Not necessarily. It all depends. It all depends. So there also, I could briefly just cover 5 steps toward achieving your goals that I tell people. The first step being make peace with the present. And I know this sounds a little strange to some people, but you have to accept what is. If you have a ton of debt, or you have a physical condition, or you have a divorce in your relationship, to argue with it in your head, to wish it were different, to put all your energy into that, truly takes your creative energy. You have to accept what is. If you've gone through a divorce, you've gone through a divorce. You accept that. And now what are we going to do now? What's my future? What am I going to do? Or if you have a lot of debt, okay, so you have a lot of debt. What are we going to do to create more abundance? But you can't be focusing constantly and complaining on the debt to create more abundance. It's just the law of the universe. What you put your attention to, it expands. And that's where you want to create. And you have to match it by a vibration. And vibration meaning, everything's energy. And our emotions, if you're depressed and despondent, you're going to attract more of that into your life. Now, we all have our ups and downs with our emotions, of course. No one's on a steady stream of just ultimate happiness. But those are emotions that just pass through us. They're meant to pass through us. But we have to accept reality as it stands in our life at the moment, meaning whatever the conditions are. You lose your job. So is it better to go around complaining to everybody about how you were laid off and you can't make your bills and you're so worried? Or is it better to say, I wish I hadn't gotten laid off my job, but since I did, what can I do now? What can I do now? I'm free. So it's a matter, again, of shifting that perspective.
Yeah, perspective is certainly key. Just this whole idea of it's okay to be rich. Nancy has a book by that title, which we will throw in the show notes. So if you've liked this episode, I do recommend you grab your copy. Are there any other good places we could go to continue following your work and learn more about you?
Well, they can always go to my website, nancyshowalter.com. There they can get a free ebook of my book. And I also have a mini course that they could also free that they can have access to also, that talks about the power, how to speak your success, the shocking truth of how your words impact achieving your goals. So that's even going more. So it's a mini course that's free. And a lot of people enjoy that. So
we will throw all those in the show notes. So you guys just click those links, go to all different places. We'll also throw in Ocean Writing, which is the mastermind event I'm organizing with 2 authors on how to become a 6-figure author, end of January, Jensen Beach in Florida, for anyone who is interested. So that link will be there as well. But once again, Nancy, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was such a pleasure having you on Breakthrough Success.
Well, you are so welcome, Mark. It has been my pleasure also.
Nancy, once again, thank you so much for joining us on Breakthrough Success. This episode was all about how do we build a better relationship with money. The next episode that we launch on Breakthrough Success is going to be about how do we build better relationships in our lives with family, with business colleagues, with all the different people in our lives who we should want to build better relationships with. So that's going to be the next episode. Make sure you tune in for that. Anyways, what I want you guys to do is to dream big, achieve greatness, and unlock your potential today.